Okay, guys, we're going to go over what we did, well, what the homework is. And the homework is going to be this 18 through 21. So remember, these are all not proportional. So we're going to use these as, we're going to use change in y over change in x. So for all four of these problems, there's only four. Please make sure you show your work, okay? Write down everything like as I'm telling you. And then as we get more advanced, you won't have to show as much work, but in the beginning, it's so critical that you guys do the work, okay? So for example, you should write change in y over change in x, because we know finding unit rate means that for not proportional graphs. Now, so now what I'm going to do is, what does that mean? It means change means to subtract, so I'm going to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In order to do that, we need to figure out what our x2, x1s, all that is going to be. So you got to pick 2 points. Okay, so, all right, let's say I pick these. This one's one of them, and I'll pick that one. Again, it doesn't matter which one because they're all on the same line, and the rate is going to be the same, the change. So now we need to decide which one's which. So let's say we're going to let this be our first x and y. To indicate it's our first x and y, we'll say this is our x, the first x, and this is our first y. They need to stay together. So now let's say we decide this is our second x and y, then this is our second x and our second y, and the numbers let us know that, okay? It's very critical that you guys write these in, label it, because it's so easy for your eyes to play tricks on you and you accidentally put the wrong numbers in the wrong place. Okay, so let's go ahead and substitute those numbers in. So which one's my y2? So I'll try using like highlighters, okay? So my y2 is this one right here, 8. So I'm going to put the 8 there. And my y1 is this one, so it's that, y1, so I'll do 8 minus 4. And then my x2 is the 5, so I'm going to put a 5 in for the x2 minus the x1, which I'll just leave circled, and that's a 5, okay? So now this is a tricky one, but it's, mathematically we could still figure out what to do. Now, what does that simplify to? Well, what's 8 minus 4? You can double check your calculator, but it's a positive 4. And I'm going to say positive because your negatives and positives are crucial here, okay? So what's 5 minus 5? Well, if you double check that, that's just 0. Now, interestingly, this means that when you have 0 on the bottom, this is going to be something called undefined, okay? In other words, it's not possible to divide by 0. Now, we're going to talk more about what undefined actually means, but this is your answer, undefined, literally, okay? So that's an undefined rate of change. It's undefinable. All right, so what does that graphically look like? If you were to plot these points, okay, and this part you don't have to do. I'll do this on a separate sheet of paper. So let's say I had, okay, 5, 5, okay, 5, 2, so that's 5, 2. Then you have 5, 4, which is up here. Then you have 5, 6, which is up here, and 5, 10. It makes this kind of line, okay? And when we talk about rate of change, it's undefinable, okay? And real life-wise, we'll talk about what that actually looks like. Okay, but for now, just know that number 18 is undefined. Number 19, all right, again, show your work. How do we start? Change in y, change in x. Well, what does that mean? I'm going to draw a long bar with a change and a change, and I have to do y2 minus y1 because y stay on top, and then x2 minus x1. Well, where do I get those points from? Pick some. So I'll try this one, and I'll try this one. Again, it doesn't matter because they're all on the same line. Now, change in y. All right, so if I rewrite this, okay, going downward, then I have my change, and then my y2, I need to decide which one's which. So let's say, okay, I want this one to be my first x and y. Did you hear what I said? First x and y. So this is my first x then. This is my first y. Then this is my second x and y, so that's my second x. And my second y. Yeah, I'm on the, yeah, can I come find you? I got it here. Here you go. Sure. Sure, no problem. Okay, I was just talking with the teacher real quick, but here you go. If you have this as your second x and y, then we're going to call this x2 and y2. All right, so if you look here, the first thing that we put in is your y2, which we designated as 3. And you might be like, well, Miss Hong, why did you choose that to be your second point? Because we can. We really can choose which one is going to be our first point and which one's going to be our second point. So our y1, we designated that to be 10.5. And then our x2 we designated to be 0, and our x1 we designated to be 3. Okay, now let's see what the math tells us here. What's 3 minus 10.5? So, if I do 3 minus 10.5, I get a negative 7.5. And then 0 minus 3, be so careful here, 0 minus 3 actually is a negative 3. Well, what does that come out to be? Because that right here is not unit rate. So, what you can do is just say, all right, well, let me divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, because I want this number to become a positive 1. You have to divide by itself in order for it to be a positive 1. So I get a positive 1 on the bottom. Negative 7.5 divided by negative 3 is 2.5. Well, what's 2.5 divided by 1 is just 2.5. And there's my unit rate, 2.5. Now you might be like, is it dollars per day, miles per hour? We don't need to worry about that now. Right now we're purely focusing on the math part of finding the unit rate. Okay, there's our answer. Let's go to number 20. Number 20, once again, show your work. It's not that hard. Change in y over change in x. What does that mean? So we're going to subtract, and we're going to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're rewriting that. We got to decide which one's going to be our x's and y's. So, all right, yes, this is not a typo. These are all meant to be 6's. Okay, if you were to graph this, it's going to make a horizontal line like this. Okay, you can try graphing it yourself, and you'll see these are all going to make a horizontal line. So, let's designate what's going to be what. All right, I'm not going to shy away from the negative, so I'll make that 1, and maybe I'll use this one. Maybe incorporate a 0. 0 actually makes life a little bit easier, but okay. So now that I know I have my 2 points, which one do you want to make your first x and y? Let's say we decide this is our first x and y. All right, then that means this is my first x, and this is my first y. Let's say you want this to be your second x and y. Well, then that means this is your second x, and this is your second y. This is so important, guys, because then once you have that, then you know what number goes where, and you're not going to confuse yourself, okay? You got to put the change in y on top. Well, which one did we just designate as y2? That's this 6 right here. And then we subtracted another 6, so 6 minus 6. Okay, all right, that's interesting. Then our x2 is a 0, and then our x1 is a negative 2. So when we subtract it already, then you subtract the negative 2, that becomes positive. All right, so what does that come out to be? Well, if you put 6 minus 6 in your calculator, you're going to get a 0. All right, let's let it ride out. And then 0 plus 2 is 2. So again, that's just 2. Now let's see what that comes out to be. Let's try doing 0 divided by 2. What is 0 divided by 2? It's just 0. Okay? So the unit rate is 0. What in the world does that mean? We'll talk about it. Okay? And then let's go to the last one. Okay, so once again, write change in y over change in x, and what does that mean? That means you're going to have a change in the y's, y2 minus y1, and you're going to have a change in the x's, x2 minus x1. Now, where are we going to get those points from? We need to designate points here. All right, maybe some of you don't like working with negatives, so why don't we pick the positives? Okay, we'll try these. Not that you have to, you could have, done the others, and you'll still get the same answer. Now, we need to designate which one's going to be our first x and y. Okay, I'll just change these things up. I'll say 2, 4 will be my first x and y, so this will be my x1, and my y1, this will be my first one. And then this will be my second x and my second y. All right, let me make that a little bit more visible. All right, here we go. So now, let's put our values in. So y2, we designated that to be 4.25. And then y1, oop, I almost went over here, so be careful. So this is what I mean by like your eyes can play tricks on you and your mind goes off for a second. and then all of a sudden you're like writing the wrong number. And I was about to do that. My mind went to like, what am I going to do after school today? And then all of a sudden, like, I was about to write 1 down when I should have written 4 down. So my brain can do that as well. So I've done the y's. I'm going to double check. This is my y2. Excellent. My y1. Okay. x2 goes here. That's my 1. And x1 goes here. All right. Let's see what it comes out to be. So 4.25 minus 4 equals 0.25. And then 1 minus 2 equals negative 1. All right. Well, what does that come out to be? Now, remember, this is not in correct unit rate. You can divide by negative 1 on top and bottom to make it become 1. So negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1. Now 0.25 divided by negative 1 is negative 0.25. Now this is in unit rate. So I'll go over here, negative 0.25. All right. I hope you guys did a good job on that. And if you want, you should give number 17 a try. All right.